Breaking tonight from Brussels and Yerevan. And dear viewers, this one quietly rewrites a piece of European history. The European Council has just confirmed that Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney is flying to Armenia next week. He will not arrive as an observer. He will not be parked behind a velvet rope as a guest. On May 4, Carney will sit at the table of the European political community, the gathering of nearly 50 heads of state and government that, until today, has been a strictly European affair. For the first time since the European political community was created in the wake of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, a non-European country has been pulled inside the room. That country is Canada. Let that word "first" do its work for a moment. There has been no precedent, not the United Kingdom, they were already on the inside. Not Norway, not Switzerland, not Iceland. They sit comfortably inside Europe's wider geographic family. Canada is something else entirely. Canada lives on the other side of the Atlantic. By geography, by political wiring, by the gravity of its trade flows, this is a North American country. And yet next week, in the Armenian capital of Yerevan, Carney will walk into a room of European leaders as one of their own. Translation: Europe just redrew its own borders to make space for Ottawa. The announcement came Tuesday from European Council President Antonio Costa, who chose X to deliver the news with unusually warm language. Europe and Canada are more than just like-minded partners, he wrote, and then went further, describing what he called a global alliance built around peace, shared prosperity, and multilateralism. Read that framing slowly, dear viewers. Costa is not the kind of diplomat who throws around the phrase global alliance by accident. Every word in his post was weighed, vetted, and signed off through the machinery of the European Council. When the second highest political office in the European Union publicly classifies Canada as part of a global alliance, what you are watching is not a courtesy. You are watching a strategic alignment harden into doctrine. Here's what makes this so historically jarring. The European political community was Emmanuel Macron's idea. The French president floated it in 2022 as a forum where European democracies could talk through the threats they all share: Russian aggression, energy security, migration, hybrid warfare, all the files where the European Union itself sometimes moves too slowly to be useful. The architecture was European by definition. The summits have traveled from Prague to Granada to London to Budapest, and most recently to Copenhagen in the autumn of last year. Each time the rule was the same: European hosts, European agendas, European leaders. That rule just broke. Why Canada? Why now? Why Yerevan? I want to walk you through what I believe is actually happening here, because the surface story barely scratches the depth of it. Start with the obvious. Canada is locked in the most painful trade conflict with Washington in living memory. The Trump administration has been swinging tariffs like a hammer against Canadian aluminum, steel, autos, lumber, and dairy. Ontario factory floors are running short shifts. Quebec smelters are tense. British Columbia loggers are watching contracts disappear. The integrated North American economy that took 3 decades to construct is being unwound in real time. And Ottawa has been hunting, with growing urgency, for partners that can replace what the United States used to be. Europe has been listening. Carney himself said it cleanly last June in Brussels. Canada, he told a room full of EU leaders, is the most European of the non-European countries. At the time, it sounded like a rhetorical flourish, a quotable line for the cameras. 12 months on, that line has hardened into Canadian foreign policy. Look at what has happened in between. Canada formally joined the European Union's Safe Defense Financing Program, the loans for weapons facility that lets European nations co-finance the rebuilding of the continent's military-industrial base. Canadian frigates are being mentioned in the same procurement conversations as German submarines and French missiles. Carney has signed expanded trade and defense agreements with Japan and the United Kingdom. Behind the scenes in Ottawa, analysts and former diplomats have started using a phrase that would have sounded absurd 2 years ago: a Hanseatic League of Middle Powers, a modern echo of that medieval trade alliance, only this version is designed to survive in a world where Washington is no longer a reliable anchor. And then there was Davos in January. Carney stepped onto that World Economic Forum stage and delivered a speech that should have set off alarms in every American chancery. The argument, stripped to its core, was simple. Middle powers have to act together. Otherwise, they end up on the menu. Translation: stop waiting for Washington. Build the new system yourselves, and build it now, before the window closes. Europe heard him. Europe agreed. And now Europe has invited him through the front door. If you're tracking this story and you want to understand where Canada is going next, hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications. We're following this realignment in real time, and the stories landing in May are going to matter for the rest of the decade. Now let me get to the part of this most analysts are missing. The location matters. Yerevan is not Brussels. Yerevan is not Paris. Yerevan is the capital of Armenia, a small Caucasian republic of fewer than 3 million people, perched on a fault line between Russia, Iran, Turkey, and the European Union. For years, Armenia was treated as part of Russia's near abroad, a security dependency of Moscow's, locked into the Eurasian orbit by treaty and by necessity. That era is ending. Armenia has spent the last 2 years pivoting hard toward Brussels. The day after the European Political Community Summit, on May 5th, the European Union will hold its first ever EU-Armenia summit in the same city. President Macron is arriving for a state visit. A new strategic partnership document is reportedly being signed. So when Carney lands in Yerevan, he is not just walking into a European meeting. He is walking into the symbolic center of a continent in the middle of redrawing its own map. The official theme of the EPC summit is Building the Future, Unity and Resilience in Europe. The agenda covers democratic resilience, connectivity, economic security, and energy security. Every single one of those files is a file Canada cares about deeply. Every single one of them is a file Canada has hard-won expertise in. Here is my read, dear viewers. Costa's invitation is not a one-off. It is a soft accession. Europe is not going to admit Canada as a member state. Carney himself has publicly ruled that out, and the legal architecture would not allow it anyway. But Europe is quietly building a new category of partnership, somewhere between member and ally, somewhere between observer and insider. And Canada is the first country to occupy that category. Watch what happens next, because the precedent is the whole point. If Canada can sit at the European political community table once, the door has been opened. The next time Europe wants to coordinate sanctions with Ottawa, the next time a Canadian Arctic deployment needs European logistics, the next time CPTPP and EU rules need a bridge negotiated between them, the table is already set. The diplomatic furniture has been moved. The protocol has been written. There is also a message being sent to Washington that nobody on either side of the Atlantic is willing to say out loud. The United States built the post-1945 alliance system on the assumption that every road ran through Washington. NATO went through Washington. The G7 went through Washington. Trade rules went through Washington. The Trump administration has spent the last 15 months telling allies and adversaries alike that those roads can be closed at any moment. Europe has now publicly embraced an alternative architecture, one in which Canada, historically the most reflexively loyal American ally in existence, sits inside the European tent. That is not a small signal. That is a tectonic one. If this is your first time on this channel, welcome. We cover the Canada that the international press keeps missing, the deals, the alliances, quiet moments of strategic shift that explain why this country matters more in 2026 than it has at any point in the last 30 years. Stick around. The May calendar alone is going to deliver weeks of content. Let me close with a sober note, because honesty serves you better than hype. Invitations are not policy. Photo opportunities are not treaties. Carney still has to deliver. Canada still has a ratification problem on its existing trade deal with the European Union. Belgium, Italy, Greece, and Ireland have not finished signing CETA into national law. Canadian defense spending still has to climb to hit the new NATO benchmark. The bridge from rhetoric to architecture is the longest bridge in international politics, and plenty of countries have fallen off it. But for 1 week in May, in a city that is itself reinventing what it means to be European, the Canadian flag will be planted somewhere it has never been planted before. The country that wrote the original playbook on North American multilateralism is going to walk into the room where European multilateralism is being rewritten. And the man holding the flag is a former central banker who 18 months ago, almost nobody outside London and Ottawa had heard of. History, dear viewers, is moving very fast. Carney goes to Yerevan on May 4th. The European political community will never look quite the same again. And the version of the Western alliance that emerges on the other side of this summit will not be the one Washington built. It will be the one Europe and Canada are quietly building together, while the cameras are pointed somewhere else. This is Canada Next. I'll see you tomorrow.